Today's video, we're going to be looking at a high-end Windows 95 build.
We review old technology from games to old PCs, and don't forget the thoughts. Yeah, ancient electronics, we cover it all.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us with this video. So today we're going to be taking a look at this machine. This is just kind of something I whipped together, and this is my, I guess you could consider it a high-end or a higher-end Windows 95 PC build here. But first things first, let's talk about something quick and get it out of the way first, and that's what the heck is going on with that case badge. So I want to address this all-important case badge issue, because you might be wondering why it's in that spot and why it has tape over it. Well, first of all, okay, it gives away a little bit about what's in this machine, and we will get to that in a moment. But these are one of those, I think they were original kind of case badges. They're on this kind of like metallic, I don't want to say foil, but they're almost like sheet metal, almost like very thin sheet metal. And if you've messed with these before as case badges, you know they might be good for one or two. I'm not sure how to say it, like relocations. Okay, so when you stick these on, you need to be really sure these kind of stickers are where you want them to be, because if you peel them off to like readjust them, so maybe you can pull it off once. But like these things really easily bend out of shape and lose their stickiness, and that's what happened with this. I originally had it in the normal space. I had it kind of around this point here, and I didn't like how it was positioned, and I peeled it off to reposition, and it just bent, and it wouldn't stick on right again, and like I was gonna be darned if I was going to waste this thing. I tried to stick it down here because it was in a little indentation, and it's all bent up, and so I tried putting a little bit of glue on it, and it was just falling off, and so I just taped it on. I know it looks horrible, but I don't really care. I have the dang badge, and I'm going to use it. That explains that really ugly badge situation there. I wanted to just get that out of the way first off. Okay, so this machine in general, I kind of built it for a few reasons. One is just I had some of the parts sitting around, and I thought it would be a cool build. But two is I do have a Windows 95 build video coming up. I'm not sure when. I haven't actually filmed it yet, but the machine's been together for quite some time, and that's I guess it's part of my like anatomy of series. And what I do with those videos, I kind of put together a computer of a certain era, and I just kind of make it the ultimate build. So I do have my ultimate Windows 95 era machine put together, but that thing is over the top. I don't know how else to put it to you guys. It is an over the top, ridiculous machine that I don't know if it even, I mean, that's just, it's just crazy. It has like 4 graphics cards in it, and it's just, among other things, it's just a ridiculous build, and it super represents the era, but it also doesn't, because it's so over the top, and it would have been so weird and expensive. So I actually wanted to make, you know, what would be considered a high-end Windows 95 era machine that was more minimalist, more reasonable. I guess reasonable would be a better way to put it, and that's what this guy is. So this is kind of a reasonable high-end Windows 95 machine. And I've kind of based it around the year 1997. With my Ultimate Windows machine, I kind of went from right before Windows 98 was released back. So there's some parts in there that kind of are from like 1998, mid 98. But this guy is more or less a 1997 build ish, and I'll explain the ish part in a second here. Yeah, so this guy here, like I said, I tried to shoot for the year 1997. There's a couple things about it, though, that aren't quite 1997. First off is the case. And I don't know, this case very well might be from 1997. It certainly looks the part. But I don't know the exact year, make, or model of this case. But generally, I don't care about that. If a case looks the part, then I don't care. I don't care if this thing was made yesterday. It looks like a 1997-ish case. That's good enough for me. It's a little bit non-standard in the fact that it has a 3.5-inch bay at the top next to the power button. Don't usually see that. And then it has these 5.25-inch bays, and then it has another 3.5-inch bay there. And usually the power button's there, but that's the reset button. So it's a little bit weird of a case, but I kind of like it. But yeah, that's the other thing. The other thing is the motherboard in there. I believe it's from 1999, but it's a slot 1 board. Why did I go with the boards? Because what I had available. I would have liked to use a slot 1 board from 1997, or even like early 98 or something like that. But you know, I probably have one, but it's in a box in a storage unit somewhere. The board I have in there that we'll go over briefly, it's the slot 1 board I had available to me. I don't think it changes things too much. Maybe, you know, the chipset in it might be newer. I don't think that's going to affect the end result very much. But just be aware that, yeah, okay, it is a board from, I think, 1999, not 1997. And the last part in here that I'm going to talk about real quick that's not from 97 is the hard drive. I think the hard drive is from 98 or maybe 99. I'll show you that guy when we open it up, but the hard drive isn't from 1997. But other than those 3 things, possibly 2 things, this is more or less a 1997 Windows 95 build. There were also more things I could have added to this. You know, I could have thrown in a 1.2 megabyte 5.25-inch floppy drive. I could have thrown in a zip drive or something, but I tried to keep it a little bit more minimalistic here to the essentials. Actually, one more thing that might not be from 97, that CD drive, I don't know the year of that CD drive. I can tell you it seems to be barely working. Actually, it and the hard drive are kind of barely working. The hard drive's working okay, but it does make some weird noises sometimes. But that CD drive is like, it's barely working. So half the fun of this build, this is a non-critical mission build for me. So it's not something I'm going to be using every day. You're going to be seeing it again, most likely, because I'm going to be using it for some other videos and testing and stuff. So some things inside of it might get switched around. But it's really not mission critical, and it's not going to be being used a whole lot. So, I mean, half the fun is just seeing how long this CD drive and the hard drive last. But that CD drive is definitely on its last legs. I do think it's an older one, though. I think I'll try to take a quick look on the year and model when I open it up. But it kind of fits the bill. So, anyways, there's really no point looking at the back of this thing. It's pretty standard. So let's open it up and let's look at the components I've picked for a high-end 1997 Windows 95 build. This case itself, it's kind of rough. Like I said, it is a little bit weird that it has the power button up here with this drive. I don't see that very often, but it just, like, this is the right cover for it, but it doesn't quite fit right. Like there's like a gap here that no matter what I do, it won't sit flush. And then on this side, it's like the opposite problem. Down at the bottom, it just doesn't sit flush, no matter what I do to it. Yeah, same here. I realize I don't have all the screws in, but even when everything's all buttoned up nicely, it still doesn't. The side panels still don't sit very flush. So, oh yeah, look, I put a fan here, but like it's missing one of the screws because I think it's broke right there, actually on the fan. It works fine though. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna open this thing up now. Okay, so here we are taking a look at the inside of this machine. As you can see, the case jankiness continues on in the inside as well. A little bit of a mess here. Again, I'm not the best with cable management. I'll go over the CPU and the cards here in the motherboard, but I actually can't see the make and model of this CD drive, and I'm not going to pull it out. But our hard drive here is a Metalist from Seagate. This is a 10 gigabyte drive. It's just what I had available. 1997, I don't know what the average hard drive size was. It wasn't 10 gigabytes. Off the top of my head, I'm guessing maybe 4 to 6 gigabytes were the drive sizes available. I don't even know if a 10 gigabyte drive was available in 97, maybe in 98. I don't know when it became the average or the standard, but this isn't a great drive, at least from what I can tell. It's kind of slow. It's like 5,400 RPM. I think it's ATA 33. It's pretty slow. So really, it's just kind of like, it's the size. It's a little bit bigger than what you would have found in 1997, but I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it. I'm trying to think back. I think in 97 is when we had our first home, like, PC. Had computers in the household before, but they're like Commodore and Amiga. My family was very late to getting on the IBM compatible PC train, and I think it was 97 Christmas. It was really my computer, because we didn't have a lot of money growing up either, so it was just like years of bothering my parents for a computer. So I guess 97, I guess, it has some nostalgic value to me. Because I think that, that was the first year I got my own IBM PC. I think it might have been 98. But all I remember, it was probably like the cheapest model my dad could find. He was kind of a cheapskate with these kind of things. It was an AST. I think it had a Pentium. I don't remember if it was a Pentium 133 or a 166. Built-in Trident video. I don't know the specific video chipset, but yeah, it was. I didn't have my own graphics card or anything, but what I was thinking of, because I specifically remember the hard drive size in that computer, and it was 1.2 gigabytes. That was the hard drive, and I think 1 or 2 years later, when that drive died, I ended up saving up and upgrading the hard drive, and I think I upgraded it to a 10 gigabyte drive, a max store 10 gigabyte, and to me, going from 1.2 gigabytes to 10 was amazing. I was like, I will never ever fill up that much space on a hard drive. Now just can't get enough. Terabyte drives aren't enough these days. But yeah, my first hard drive and my first IBM PC at home was 1.2 gigabytes. But yeah, okay. Anyways, that's why I thought of that 10 gigabytes. So I'm going to pull these things out, and then we'll take a look at the individual components of what I think make a. Again, I don't think this isn't my ultimate Windows 95 machine, but it's some pretty high-end parts. So let's take a look. So one annoying thing about this case is you can't remove any of the expansion cards without removing this plate first. It's not too difficult. It's just these two screws, and then this removes, but it is a little bit of annoyance anytime you want to change or add a card. You've got to take this thing off. Okay, taking a look at the board here, you can see it is an Asus P3BF. Looks like revision 1.03. Yes, this is a slot 1 Pentium 2/Pentium 3 board. Again, I think this board came out in 99. It could have been, give or take, but I do not believe this is a 1997 board. So it does use the 440BX chipset right there as well, which I believe was released in 1998. So yeah, the chipset is a little bit past our 1997 sort of target here. But like I said, I don't think it's going to affect results that much. Correct me if I'm wrong, but again, I would have liked to use an actual 1997 or 98 board with an older chipset in it, but this is what I had on hand. Anyways, it still fits the air nicely. We got AGP, PCI, 16-bit ISA. I did limit myself to 256 megabytes of RAM. I think 256 is probably a lot for 1997. Again, reminiscing my old PC from the period I had when I got it for Christmas. It had 32 megabytes of RAM, and I think a year later I upgraded it to 64. So that's a huge amount, I'm guessing, for 1997. But whatever. Alright, moving on to the CPU. This is a 1997 part, and this was the fastest CPU you could get for that year, at least from Intel, but I believe overall this might be the fastest CPU you could have gotten in 1997. And this is a 300 megahertz Pentium 2. I do like the heatsink on this particular one. So we have 512 kilobytes of L2 cache, I believe running at half the speed of the CPU. This is like a CPU card. The cache isn't actually built into the CPU, it's just next to it on the card under all this plastic here. But yeah, this was a pretty fast card for 1997. And this thing was a ridiculous amount of money. So looking at some sources, apparently this thing was like $2,000. Or just under $2,000 in 1997, kind of a ridiculous amount of money for the time. So yeah, this definitely would have been a really high-end part for the year 1997. I just want to look at this little PCI USB card I have. So one of the quirks of this is, even though recently a friend actually pointed me to some drivers that USB drivers for Windows 95 that actually work really well. I've had a lot of luck with them. Except in this build, for whatever reason, even after the drivers are installed, the USB ports on the actual motherboard just do not work. They come up in Device Manager, but the drivers will not install for them for whatever reason. Though this little card here, I believe it's like a CMD. It's a silicon image on there, but it comes up as like a CMD chip or whatever in Device Manager. For whatever reason, the drivers do install for this little USB card, and it seems to work just fine. I think this is just USB 1. I do not think this is a USB 2.0 card, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, this thing works fine. It's just 2 on there. It's kind of weird that they're kind of like poking out on this card a bit, but yeah, this card just works pretty well in Windows 95 with those drivers. Alright, next up, let's take a look at the sound card we'll be using. I went with an ISA sound card since it is a Windows 95 build. DOS is still very much a consideration, so I wanted a 16-bit card for good DOS compatibility. And the card I went with wouldn't necessarily be seen as the high-end or the highest-end sound card for 1997. I went with an ESS audio drive. Specifically, this is the ES1868F chip on there. And like I said, this is a good overall DOS card. I haven't really used them very much in the past, so I just wanted to use this card. Although, like I said, it's probably not seen as the pinnacle of sound cards for 1997. I think this card actually came out in 1997. Again, I could be wrong on that, but I do believe this is a 1997 or 1997-ish sound card. But this is really decent, really good in DOS, really good in Windows too. It doesn't have like a true OPL FM chip on it, but it kind of emulates Yamaha OPL sound, and it's pretty good. It's not exactly, but it's pretty good. It doesn't have the hanging MIDI bug. Now I hear in Windows it kind of acts as an OPL4 chip. It gives you a little bit of enhancements if you're using the FM synth in Windows. It does a couple other things. If you're interested in this card, Phil from Phil's Computer Lab did a video specifically on this ESS audio drive card, and he really liked it, and I kind of like it too. Yeah, we do have our game port, and we have our 3 audio outline in, and then the mic port down here. Now, one of my big annoyances with this card, which if this was fixed, this probably would make it one of my ultimate kind of like DOS cards, or even for like Windows, is the wavetable header. Unfortunately, this is not a full height card. So if you put a MIDI card on there, or a wavetable card, it's going to hang down below the ISA slot, so it's just not going to fit. that's really annoying. And now I know they do make like smaller ones, and I know there's stuff like the Dream Blaster and what else. I don't really. Again, I'm a little bit of a purist. I would prefer sort of period correct, like wavetable cards. But yeah, that's my issue with these ESS audio drives. You can't really fit a wavetable card on them. So for an example, here is, this is a Wave Blaster. This is from Creative. So this just will not, if you look at it, if you connect it there, it's coming down like to the same length as the ISA, like the connector here. So if this is installed, your motherboard's going to be here. It's going to hit up against this, so you can't connect like a full-sized card on here. Like I said, I do believe there were even period correct ones that were like smaller. Those would work, but any of these full-sized boards just won't work. Now I know there's some people that make, like, you can make an adapter cable that just comes off here, and then you can connect it to a card like this. I guess you just have this hang-in or something. I don't really like the idea of that, but that's one route you can go. I'm not handy enough to make one of those cables. If anyone watching this video would like to make one for me, I could pay you a reasonable fee to make one, because I'm just not handy with making those kind of cables and stuff. But that's one option for connecting wavetable boards. I also have another ESS audio drive right here. This is actually a smaller card, but the wavetable header is situated differently. And you'd think this might work, but I don't, like, it would be really awkward. Even if it connected like this, that's really awkward, but I believe how the orientation is, I would have to connect it like that, which just won't work. Again, I think this was really meant for like the smaller wavetable cards that would have, you know, connected just right here. But yeah, I believe there are some full height ESS audio drive cards, but it seems like the bulk of those seem to be in Russia or the Ukraine, and I wouldn't recommend anyone order anything from that area of the world for the moment. And remember, I'm making this video in like March 2022 for context on that. And lastly, for video, we have the Riva 128 from Nvidia. This is not the faster Riva 128Z or ZX. I believe that card was released in '98, but this would have been our top dog, I believe, for 1997. It had a lot of competition, but I believe overall this was your fastest and most powerful graphics card for 1997. Unlike a lot of cards at the time, it didn't use an API for its graphics, so you didn't have to get a certain version of a game to take advantage of it. It went all in on OpenGL and Direct3D just for overall compatibility. I think it's 2 megabytes of memory on here. It might be 4, but I think it's 2. I'm not 100% sure. This is the Dell OEM version. This is the Velocity 128. But, you know, you can actually use this card with just the regular Nvidia reference drivers. The one thing about this specific Riva 128 that I think is weird is all the, like, the caps with, like, the long legs. I don't see that a lot on video cards. Usually the caps are, like, flush with the card. So it looks really, like, primitive-ish. I don't know how to say it. It just looks messy how, you know, the caps are all bent and they have like the long legs. It just looks like this was just like put together in somebody's basement or something. But yeah, this is a good card. This would be a top dog graphics card from 1997. All right, let's take a quick look at a couple DOS benchmarks. Not too many here, just the standards. So with PCP Player at 640 by 480, we get a score of 20.5. Looking at Doom, we get a score of 77.6 FPS. And then finally, Quake at 640 by 480, we get a score of 29.8 FPS. I don't know. I don't have much to directly compare it with off the bat here in front of me, but those scores seem low. I'm not sure if it is. I mean, I'm looking here. What I have to compare it with right away, I have a K62 running at 366 megahertz. with a Verge DX, and that scores a little higher than this machine. For instance, with that machine, I get 25.3 with PCP Player, I get 83.1 with Doom, and I get 44.3 FPS with Quake. So I don't know. I know that system's a little faster megahertz wise. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with faster L2 cache. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe that is spot on, but to me it just feels like it's running a little bit slow. But let's move on to Windows, and let's take a look at some benchmarks and some games running on this machine. And just a quick reminder, we are running on that Pentium 2, 300 megahertz, and the system is running on a 66 megahertz front side bus. There's Power Strip taking a look at our Riva 128 running at 100 megahertz with the 4 megabytes of RAM. So anyways, with the initial drivers, it is a Dell OEM card, and I believe Dell has its own drivers for the Velocity, the STB Velocity 128, but I went and I just got the non-Dell STB Velocity 128 drivers. They seem to work just as well as the Dell version. I kind of like these drivers as far as like what they do. Like, they change kind of the setup in display properties. It adds like not only a resolution but a desktop area slider. I don't see that very often, not that I would personally use it. And you know, you get your general options there and different little things. Now there is one downside to these drivers. Now the upside is they're actually fairly fast drivers in Direct 3D. Unfortunately, there is no OpenGL support with these particular drivers. Now, I'm using earlier drivers from 1998. Later drivers from STB do have OpenGL support, and you can also use Nvidia generic just reference drivers from Nvidia. Now, the problem with the later drivers that do have OpenGL support, it tends to hurt the Direct 3D support, but we'll look at some different drivers later. But for now, we're just going to go with these kind of official Velocity 128 drivers that unfortunately do not have OpenGL support. Alright, let's start with 3D Mark 99, and it looks pretty good. You've got the sky, looks normal. You do see a little like pop in, you see the buildings in the background, they sort of you know, phase in. You can see them actually being drawn. The FPS isn't great, we're looking at 10, 11, but I mean, other than that, it looks okay. It seems to be running okay. So let's go on to the second test here. I'm not sure, the first person test, I guess we'll call it. Takes a second here to load up, and we can see right away it doesn't look right. It's actually running, I mean, the counter up there says like 7, 9 FPS, but it's actually, like, just watching it, it actually seems to be running okay. But as we can see, there's all kind of weirdness going on with the textures and just the colors and are shifting, and just, it obviously does not look correct. And in the end, we get a score of 906 3D marks. Our first game, let's take a look at Forsaken, which I think came out in 97. I like how it actually has all the cards from the era. There's actually a specific executable for the Riva 128. So let's take a look at this game.
Orbital. Power pod. Power pod. Solaris. Titan.
Opinion, that looked pretty good, and we got a really good average FPS of almost 60 FPS throughout. So really good showing there with Forsaken for the Riva 128. Unfortunately, with Final Fantasy VII, we don't have the option for 3D acceleration with this game. I do believe later they released a patch which allowed 3D acceleration with the Riva 128, but the patch doesn't seem to work with the demo. But it does allow us here to take a listen to the synth, the FM synth, the ESS audio drive. Now, I also wanted to take a quick look at Jackrabbit 2, and the reason I specifically wanted to look at this game is when I was researching the Riva 128, I was reading some forums, specifically over at Vogan's, and someone mentioned Jackrabbit 2, and they said that of the cards of that era, the Riva 128 was the only card that they could actually get this game to scroll smoothly with. So I figured I'd download the demo and check it out, see if it scrolls smoothly. And yeah, the game looks and seems to scroll just fine. I didn't have any stuttering or any issues with scrolling. It seemed to play just fine. And here we have the game Incoming. This is another game that seemed to just look and play fine. Now, I didn't really play too far into the game. I've only playing the demo here, and I know later on there's spots in this game where you get into vehicles and stuff, but as far as this part of the game, yeah, it looked and played, you know, just fine. I know there's supposed to be a command to get an FPS counter working with this demo. I looked and looked and I couldn't figure out how to get the FPS counter to come up for this game, or at least for the demo. If anyone knows how to run the benchmark for this, please let me know in the comments. And of course we have to take a look at Tomb Raider 2, a game which came out in 1997, which is kind of the theme year of our computer here. And this is a game where one of the issues with the Riva 128 becomes kind of apparent, and that's like what they call screen tearing. If you look up, for instance, on the rock wall, you see all those little white lines that kind of appear. And it's a known issue with the Riva 128. Some games it's not really a factor, but others, like this one, it becomes a little more apparent, where you'll see that kind of tearing between different textures or different graphical objects. Other than that, though, I think the game looks good and it runs fine on this setup. So let's take a look at Shogo Mobile Armor Division, and this is a game where definitely the screen tearing is very apparent, at least in this first level here. It's a lot. Like I said, it's very, very apparent. Other than that, it looks pretty good. It plays decently on this setup. I think maybe with this game, it could have a lot to do with the drivers, and we'll take a look at different drivers in a second here, but with this setup and with this driver in this first stage, the screen tearing is very apparent.
This is Avenging Angel on final approach. Drop point secure, over.
So we get to stage 2. Obviously there's something weird going on here with the textures. I mean, the characters look fine, his hands look fine, performance is okay, but obviously these wall textures, there's something not right going on. Personally, I kind of like it. It gives me like a vaporwave sort of feeling with the color scheme, but it's not how it's supposed to look. I don't think it's the card itself. I think it's probably the drivers.
He said his navcom went down?
Yeah, he tells me he was drifting in space the whole time, and that's why.
Did you check with the flight officer?
So as I said earlier, these STB Velocity 128 drivers from 97, they do not support OpenGL. As you can see here when I try to run Quake 3, it just doesn't support OpenGL, although it is pretty fast in Direct 3D, but let's try some different drivers. So here we've installed some Nvidia reference drivers from 98. These ones do support OpenGL and of course Direct 3D, although not quite as quick as I'll show you in a second. But I don't know, I don't like these ones as much. They're kind of a little bit more boring, but you know, I guess they're a little bit more versatile than the other drivers we were using. I guess just not as strong with the presentation with these ones. It just kind of, when you look up the card and device manager, it just kind of refers to it generically as Riva 128/128 XZ, I think, ZX. But yeah, like I said, at least now we can play our, we can get our Quake fill in. Running 3D Mark 99, we immediately can see the sky is different. It's darker, much darker now. It's like nighttime, and the buildings appear weirdly. It reminds me of like those 90s computer movie scenes with computer generated stuff. It's like the Matrix, like the buildings just kind of like phase, and it's kind of cool looking. And here we have the second benchmark, and as you can see, these new drivers seem to have fixed the visual issues. It looks more or less okay now, with the exception of it seems to be running quite a bit slower than it did with our other drivers, but at least it actually looks how it's supposed to look, more or less. And I can say 3D Mark did score lower this time around. It got about a 663 3D Marks with these drivers, so a bit lower than the original drivers. And let's take a quick look at Forsaken again, using these slightly newer reference drivers.
PowerPod. Solaris.
And as you can see with these drivers, we do get a little bit less FPS. Still certainly playable, but it's about 15 FPS lower than it was with those earlier drivers. And taking a look at Quake 2 running the OpenGL drivers, we get about 41, 42 FPS. Overall, not bad. Finally, let's take a look at Quake 3. It kind of impressed me that a card this old was able to play Quake quite competently. Well, it got 18.1 FPS doing the benchmark, but actually playing the game, it actually played decently. But you got to understand, this was a card from 1997, a very early AGP card. But it actually ran pretty well. I played other cards that were well, not necessarily more powerful, but they gave me from the same era that just gave me a lot of like graphical issues. I believe I played this game with the Permedia 2, and it gave me like weird texture issues. Whereas the Riva 128, it did quite adequately, I guess, for a card of its vintage. Playing this game, this is a game. When Phil reviewed this card, he talked a lot about how the Riva 128 gave kind of a weird grainy quality, and I saw that a little bit, but with Quake 3 I really saw it. It really was gave me like a grainy image. It almost looked like I was watching it and it was like a 70s film with that kind of grainy 70s sort of visuals going on. I kind of dug it. Some of the effects looked weird, like the plasma rifle looked really strange playing this game on the card, but overall, a good effort from the Riva 128 playing this game, which is what this game came out in, what, like 99, I think, maybe 2000. But that's it's a couple of years after it. Computer technology moved quick in the 90s, so good showing from the Riva 128. And that was a look at our 1997-ish PC. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You'll be seeing this machine again, probably with different things inside of it. I have plans for this machine to use it in a few different tests and maybe possible future videos I want to do. But I just really wanted to do this just to play around with some cards I haven't gotten a chance to in the past, and maybe to give you a more traditional view of a Windows 95 high-end kind of build. Like I said, I have another Windows 95 era build video coming, and that machine's just over the top. So I wanted to do a little bit so I wanted to do a video on a machine that was a little bit more reasonable. Maybe reasonable is the best word for it. Please, I like all the interaction in the comments section, so if you have any comments, please let us know in the comments section, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.